He's scheduled to be right. You say you don't want us? I'm sorry. I never read the but every year there's
I feel like a lot of new faces. I'm assuming staff.
I had been going to college at University of Maryland, College Park for 2 years, and my parents had an opportunity to move to Florida, and I said, heck yeah, I'm going. So I transferred to UF and got there as a junior in '94. I met a guy that summer while I was working at Publix, of all places, who was an English major, and I said, well, that's interesting. I'm an English major too. We got to be friends. And when I got to UF in the fall, there was a student group called the English Society. And he looped me into that, and I went for a couple meetings, and after a couple meetings I said, hey guys, I have an idea. I want to start a magazine. And they said, how the heck are we going to do that? And I said, I don't know, but I want to do it. So, what do you think? And, after a little bit of discussion, everybody was kind of on board, but figure out how we would actually produce it. And part of what I didn't want to do was necessarily have any kind of oversight. So I didn't, I wanted to do it on the cheap so that we could have freedom, basically. And that's part of the reason why the first 2 issues were very much like photocopied. Also, being students, and it being 1994, we were very limited in terms of what we could do. So it was interesting also because, the English Society at that time, it was, a bunch of English majors, but not necessarily creative writing department people. So, we had a lot of discussion about, who gives us the right to judge other people's writing, et cetera, et cetera. But, and at the time it was very much focused on poetry and fiction. The name T came from, and this might be cringy to some people, but at the time I was a huge fan of the Beatniks. So I was reading a lot of Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, and Jack Kerouac referred to marijuana as tea. I at the time I was kind of a straight edge dude, but I just liked the name T. And so I said, I think we should call it T. And Colby was a huge fan of Star Trek. And so the first edition, which I don't even know if anybody has anymore, it was T, and the title was Earl Grey parentheses hot, because apparently that was
Star Trek.
How Captain Kirk ordered his tea on the Enterprise.
Oh my gosh.
There's a little bit of nerdy history.
So, what got you? When did you first hear about tea?
I was a freshman. I didn't have a mustache back then. I couldn't grow
Really?
up.
You always had a mustache. Like even when you were a little kid, I just see you with a mustache.
Yeah. I just came out of the womb with the mustache and the hair, and that was it. No, but I was a kid. I mean, I still am a kid, obviously. But I was probably 18, maybe just about to turn 19. When I saw a flyer in Matherly Hall. They used to have creative writing classes there over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to be one of those students that started in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it on my way out, and it had a little link. And this was really the first time that I had ever interacted with or considered a career in literary publishing. But it seemed like such a fun crowd.
Yeah.
That they really had. I mean, even now, I think that the website just has this alluring quality to it, this Java jiving, hard rocking nature that it's always had.
First, can you walk us through like how you got involved with tea?
I was in a creative writing class, and like I stayed after hours talking with the professor, and when I was walking back home, I saw a flyer in Turlington, and it was just talking about a magazine called Tea, and I was curious, so I just like looked up what they were about and just sent an application, and I didn't really think they were gonna accept me, but it was just a random stroke of luck, you know, like just finding the flyer.
Yeah. Did you join initially like on a staff, or did you go straight into the cabinet?
I was a member of the art staff first, because it just seemed like something I hadn't really, like I knew a lot about writing, but just nothing about art. So I wanted to see what it was like. I'm still kind of surprised that I went from like art staff to like vice president in like a year.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was Ale, actually. He got me interested in it because they were doing Philadelphia trips for the AWP conference last year, and no one wanted to go. So I just was like, free trip. I mean, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And I really connected with Ray, who was on the poetry staff, and Ale, who was the president and editor-in-chief at the time. And like that, I got a good experience about tea, and I learned more about magazines in general, and it just made me like inspired to go for vice president.
How did you get involved with tea?
So I got involved with tea in 2019. So I was going to be a incoming freshman, and I was looking for like creative organizations to join. And I was on Instagram, and I saw Tea Magazine, and I saw that they were accepting applications. I'm like, okay, you know, this seems cool. Like, it seemed kind of like very focused on like arts and like very specific to the arts rather than maybe being like along the lines of a pop culture magazine. And I kind of liked that a little bit because I felt it was staying, you know, more true to just, you know, I guess if you call it simple, just like any kind of photography, any kind of art. So I liked that. It was kind of like undergraduate focused and like giving students a platform.
Julia, the design editor, Julia Cooper, is the one who told me about tea. I think it was like my freshman year. Something happened and I couldn't join. I forgot what. It was probably another club or something. But the year after, I was like, I need to join tea. And that was the year of the pandemic. So I joined that year as a poetry staff. And that was interesting. But yeah, so it was my roommate, Julia. She is the one who introduced me and the reason why I joined. Came to UF. I'm a biology major. So I was like taking a lot of sciencey classes. But I wanted to do something literary and something creative, so I started doing poetry workshops, and then I started getting really into it and writing a lot of poetry myself and like reading, and then also going to poetry readings and stuff like that. My mom's an English teacher as well, so my whole life I've kind of been exposed to that kind of thing, but I've never explored it myself. So going to UF, doing that myself, that really inspired me to like want to join poetry and want to learn more. And I honestly think it's like really cool to read what people write, so I think that's why I chose poetry, just to see what everyone's writing and just to read poems all the time.
So my name is Julia Fuentes, and I joined T 3 years ago. So I was a junior, and I started off on pro staff, and then a year later I did pro staff and vice president, and then now editor in chief. But I was at that point I was just an English major, and I was doing a lot of the creative writing, like fiction courses. So that's where I first saw T. It was just like on the whiteboard. Someone had just written like T Lit Mag. So that's how I first like heard about it, and I just looked it up, and then I saw everything and got really into it. First person I met in T, that's hard because I joined the COVID year, so everything was on Zoom. So the first person I was speaking with was the previous editor-in-chief, who was Megan. But it's funny because, so back then the voting process was different than the way we do it now. But we're going to transition to like voting that way again. But the way we voted was everybody looks at every single piece regardless of what staff you're on. So, and the floor is open to anyone to speak on a piece. And you don't have to feel qualified to speak on art. Like I have no experience with art whatsoever. So a lot of it was, I felt like me speaking a lot, and James graduated last year. He was secretary and prose editor his last year, and he was part of T, my guess is also 3 years. So James and I are really close. We were both applying, or he's a year above me, but we were both talking about applying to MFA programs at the same time. He also did prose, and he was also my prose editor when I was on prose staff. So he was just here. He's doing I know he's doing a PhD program, I can't remember where. He's like deciding between them. So he was here and we caught up with him. But yeah, also there's my roommate Wesli, who I got her into T. I met her like a year and a half ago. And so she's like more poetry, so I got her to join poetry staff and then eventually secretary and president. I mean, there are a lot of people, but James was like the first really close friend I made from T.
Wrong way. What? Pizza. Hey. I just arrived. Hi. Oh, I like it anyways. It's good.
I do that too much of it.
No, there is a lot of videos of you doing that.
No, you can have that. You can't open it. It's not open yet.
You were the one who had the idea for having a cabinet in T. Tell me about that process. What made you feel the need for that? Everything.
Yeah, okay. So I think, as I was saying before, ideas for T, I think that you also find this when you speak to other editors or other leaders, started to fester in my mind at least, long before they could actually happen, or I had the possibility to manifest them. So I think that the first idea I had for a cabinet must have come my sophomore year. At the time, I was the prose editor and the treasurer, and up to that point, well, a few things. Firstly, editors had always been wearing two hats when it came to being both leaders editorially, creating the magazine, publishing the actual works, and leaders in a managerial sense, more specifically with student government, organizing funds, creating events, etc., etc. And I think that I have to be honest with myself in saying I didn't know the first thing about being a treasurer. And as a result, we didn't have as many extravagant events. We didn't know what we were doing when it came to student government. So there was a need on that front, I think, to start distinguishing those roles, which is the conception, those first beginnings of what would happen by the end of T24, where we separated the two to being president and being editor-in-chief, or being a treasurer and then somebody else would be the editor. I think that was the first part of it. But the second part had to do with one specific branch of the cabinet, and that was the podcast. There were a lot of, there are a lot of literary magazines that have exciting web content, whether it be podcasts, interviews with artists, not student artists necessarily, things that people can interact with that doesn't necessarily pertain to prose, poetry, etc., but still has a literary leaning. And I kind of wanted that for T, but as I just mentioned, I had no idea how to organize the funds for that, firstly. And secondly, I really didn't have anybody that was in a position to do it. I was already wearing a lot of hats as it was, as was Megan at the time, who was our editor-in-chief, and Brianna, who was she was the poetry editor and the vice president at the time. And everybody else was very focused on the magazine. That was just the culture of what T was. So when the opportunity presented itself at the beginnings of T24, so that summer, to start doing my own thing as editor-in-chief and president, I realized that there was a need to start breaking the two, start distinguishing something different, something unique, that could build that role, whether it be for the podcast or upkeeping the website. And then I think that's where it just kind of expanded into something that even I didn't imagine when I was in my sophomore year, because of the help of everybody that was around me.
For sure. Yeah. That's a really good answer. So
nice.
For the people, like if you had to explain to somebody who's never heard of T, who's never been in T, how the infrastructure of it works, like how the staff works and how the cabinet works, how would you explain that to someone?
Okay, yeah, of course. The staff is what it has always been. It's the blood and muscles of what T is, you know. It's the bones, it's the essence of what T is. They're the people that come together every single week, typically, to read and revise and select poems, prose pieces, art, photography, that will inevitably become an issue of T. And it's painstaking work. It's like I said, coming in every week, and then towards the end, revising, placing pieces together in the magazine, making sure that it's ready for print, and organizing the contract to be printed. The cabinet and its chief leaders in the executives, which would be the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary, is more focused on expanding T beyond the page. That is, creating a community which will be able to enjoy the fruits of the work of the staff a year from now. So, in other words, it's reaching out, whether it's in your case, Laura, being a historian, creating this amazing documentary here that I think I'm super excited for. And a lot of people will be too. I mean, you'll be sharing the story of T to people that don't necessarily even know about it when it comes to the release party in April. The podcast, starting to bring student artists into the fold who weren't necessarily interested in editing, but still want to be a part of a literary community. The mentorship program, when you're just starting out as a freshman, as we all did, including myself, and you just want somebody to guide you. I think that's what the point of the cabinet is. Each of the branches in its own unique way is about ensuring that when somebody wants to find out about literature and the arts in Gainesville and what the community has to offer, the first thing that they'll find is tea. And once they find that, they don't necessarily need to look that much further.
Describe what you do for Tea Magazine and your position in your job.
Yeah, so I graduated. So last semester and the semester before, I think I was photography editor for 2 semesters. Gosh, 2 or 3. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I think during COVID, everything was just kind of like blending together a little bit. So basically, as photography editor, we would kind of review submissions along with the photography staff and kind of guide, discussions about the pieces and bring up points of discussion about those. And also I kind of helped create the layout of the magazine, working with prose and poetry editors and deciding if, certain photography pieces would be nice or, kind of create a theme next to, prose and poetry pieces. And also just doing a few workshops like towards the beginning of the semester and how you can critique photography. So kind of anything that had to do with photography or putting together the magazine I was involved with.
How do you critique photography? Like if you could explain it.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of, I would say, I guess more than poetry and prose, I feel like it's a little bit instinctive. Like, how you usually see an art piece or a photography piece, you're like, whoa, like that looks cool because there's some aspect of it that's kind of just drawing your eye in. So I usually try to analyze that feeling further. Like, why are you so, intrigued by this? Is there a certain color? Is there like a certain angle or shadow? Like, so I kind of identify like the main aspect that is like drawing you into the piece. Think about why it is the photographer maybe trying to share a message, and then also look at other aspects of the piece that maybe you hadn't noticed before, and try to kind of think of it as like a cohesive, not a story, because sometimes like a picture is really just a picture. Trying to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So kind of try to, yeah. So I guess, kind of try to figure out what specifically about it that you like and what specifically about it you don't like. And it can even be like, doesn't have to be like, I guess, super like analytical or technical. It can be really simple. Like, I just really like this light coming in at this angle, and that can be it. So I think just kind of going with your gut feeling and then, doing the due diligence to like further analyze what is creating that gut feeling is what I would say.
I think it honestly is based on the community, the people that you get to meet. Because like he isn't like exclusively an art-based thing or like English-based. It's like not based on a major, so there's a lot of different people from a lot of different like parts of the UF and a lot of different backgrounds. So like meeting people and like actually connecting with them and doing things that are just creative, for fun, honestly, and just like exploring the community. That is like the most important thing, I think, when it comes to tea. There's always like gonna be the business side of it and like the structure and the organization and everything that goes with it, but like having like little get-togethers and like parties and stuff like that, and just like talking about art is like fun and I think important. So I think that's what draws me to it, the fact that we could talk to everyone and just like have a little community. And the magazine is just so interesting. It's just like so varied. There isn't every year I don't think there has been a theme, so there's a lot of different pieces that you could like see in one magazine, which is also super cool, I think.
Yeah.
So when I was doing it through the pandemic, it seemed like after a certain time, like Zoom meetings are tiring. They just are like, there's no getting around that, and I think like more so than in person, because I think in person there's time where you could like just chill, but sometimes in Zoom it's like you're staring at a screen for hours and that gets overwhelming. So we had staff meetings, I think pretty much weekly that year, and they went on for a while sometimes, and it ended up being just a couple people staying behind and like talking about pieces, just because people had other things to do. It was tiring on being on Zoom for hours. So I think that was like the kind of dynamic. There was a group of people that would stay and just like talk about pieces like ad nauseum, honestly, on Zoom. So I think that was a difference, because in person we have like set time and we have like meetings that are not as long, because you have to get there as well in person. So I think that did change. I guess the meeting times were limited, but also we got through things a lot more with a lot more people because people could make it more in person. I also think, like I said before, like actually connecting to people was a lot easier in person, and to like just talk about random things and like to get to know them was a lot easier because on Zoom it feels like you're also like performing in a certain way or like presenting yourself in a certain way, which is not something you could do as easily or like as like naturally, I guess, in person. So I think talking to people in person was a big step forward to like, I guess, like expanding our community and like getting to know each other closer, which was nice. So I think that was the biggest change was getting to know people better in person.
I don't think tea has ever felt obligatory to me, like other organizations where you're trying to put something on your resume, or it feels kind of like coursework or an extension of your academic life. I've never felt that way about tea. But the pleasant surprise, I would say, is that there are so many people who are so passionate about tea. And it's nice to like pass that torch on and know that tea is in good hands, you know, when you leave. It's like a child in some sense, or like a pet. You don't want to give away, but you're like, okay, everything's gonna be fine.
If you could describe the culture at T or the members a part of it, how would you do so? Like, what's the
hectic is the first word that comes to mind. Everyone is so quirky and they have all these things going on in their lives, and I haven't met like any members that are like just alike. You know, everyone has their uniqueness to them. And so as an organization, I know that like Ale likes to throw the word around that we're like an anarchy in a way, because we're not like other magazines, and I kind of agree with that. I didn't notice at first, but we kind of do things our own way. So it's definitely interesting, and like no 2 years are ever the same.
Yeah. Have you met like a lot of like your good friends through T, would you say?
Yeah. Because T kind of feels like a fraternity or sorority, just without like hazing, and like I met a lot of good friends through here. A lot of friends that I hope to like keep even when I graduate, that I could like go to for support, or when I like want to know like, oh, does this picture look really good, or does this poem, like, does it read really well? Like they're the type of friends I can go to for that.
I would describe it as very collaborative. That's like the one thing that jumped out at me the most. I remember in 2019 when I joined, T was only like 7 people. So it kind of started off as like, I remember I would go, so the meetings were at like 6, so I'd go pick up like a Chipotle bowl, the Chipotle on University, and I'd go to the classroom building. We'd sit in the room with all the lights off, and we would just pull up the pieces, and there were just 7 of us like at a table just looking at the pieces on the projector. And I think it's really grown over the years, so now we have like concrete staffs, which I think is great. So just kind of like people just, you know, constantly sharing their thoughts and ideas, and I think like the collaboration of T is what really makes it stand out, and also the fact that like we're looking at like art from, or you know, pieces from the UF community, and I think that's really special, so it really enhances that, you know, vibe of collaboration, and that's why I really love it. It's like a family there. Like I love the staffers and I love the fellow editors. It's just really, really nice to be a part of.
in your experience, what does tea mean to you?
That's a hard one. Tea is a place for artists that just want a home, you know, like artists that want to enter into the professional world but need a good start. And I think that's what tea is. You know, it's a place for people who have you could have the classy art that belongs in the Renaissance fair, or you could have something that's a little bit more out there. You know, and I think tea's a good place for undergraduate artists.
You know, coming in as a freshman, and then I feel like you have all these expectations, like I'm gonna make this many friends, like I'm gonna be part of all these clubs, like I'm gonna meet so many people, and then sometimes the crushing reality is it doesn't go like that. So at least for me, it was also really helped me get accustomed to college, you know, just having this almost built-in group of friends, anything about where should I live, what are good places to eat. So I think just helped me become more comfortable at UF, especially because I was a bio major, so I wasn't really taking any arts classes.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to have friends outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sciencey area. So I think it just helped me become more comfortable in my own skin and introduce me to some people who I hopefully will be lifelong friends with.
We were only online. It was it were the same amount of meetings, I think, but it was they were longer online, so it was harder to reach that connection. I remember the following year, after we actually saw people in person, I would go to people and be I want to be your friend online, but I didn't know how to actually approach you, I guess, in that in this setting. So having it go from online platform for me to in person was a big change, and I think that actually strengthened our community a little bit more and made us a little bit closer, which was nice. And even last year we had a lot of pieces and we didn't know how to tackle that because the pandemic year we didn't have as many because people were everywhere. Everyone was scattered and not submitting as much. So last year we were figuring out how to actually build up the magazine and the club again, and I think that was a transition year again. And this year has been more testing out things that we've wanted to try before and we just haven't, and then finding out things that actually have been working really well, the green submissions, just a different process for accepting submissions and reading through them. Still it's continually experimenting how to make this work. I think it also just varies based on who is running it and what everyone else wants, because I think the tea definitely does run on staff and its editors and everyone, whatever they want, it's gonna be how it's gonna be run. So I think that's important. There's not a set standard for tea. I think it evolves through time, which is really important. I haven't been here since the longest. I definitely haven't. Julia and Zoya have been here the longest, so if you guys want to talk to them as well, because they have a lot of insights that I don't. But for me, it was from the pandemic year onwards, seeing that change. So yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, and it's more sustainable.
What's up? What's that face?
Nancy will be the art editor. Oh my god, poetry editor. She will be the next editor. She will be the poetry editor for the spring, and Sophia who's not here is going to be they're going to be kind of working together. Sophia BC is not here. And I'm a junior, so I'll be.
Okay, but it's it's
I mean, I just it's because of
That's what I want.
well, you know, at this point we're just really bored.
Yeah, exactly. What is that?
Every time I do that, I think it sounds I remember. Oh gosh, a lot. I think gosh, I have a lot. I think like one of the things that was really fun were the retreats, like at Lake Wahlberg. I really enjoyed those. Like we would take breaks and go out and play beach volleyball, and then we'd all be sitting and eating pizza and just talking. And I mean, in addition to doing work, just like having fun while we were doing it.
Yeah.
So I think just being with everybody, those big staffers meetings, those were so fun.
It was basically figuring out working on the magazine or zine, and then we did arrange to have like basically open mic nights, and sometimes open mic. One that was hysterical to me was we had a podium in front of the main library on the Plaza of the Americas. And it was like lunchtime, and we all just got up and started reading poems, so that was like our event. But, yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's just kind of mind-blowing to see like all the stuff you guys are doing. Real, not careful, but just really appreciative of the other folks at the time. So, everyone played sort of a different role. Like Katie Olszewski really was just sort of a driving force, like something needed to be done, she would go figure out how to get it done, My friend George Lopez was a little bit more like very focused on his studies. He had ambitions of going to grad school and studying with, I'm gonna blank on the name of the author. But he was heavily into metafiction and John Barth and all these sort of obscure writers. So he was sort of like a mystic. I mean, honestly, he might cringe at that kind of description, but he was, he was sort of a peacemaker too. That's an
important role.
Yeah, and then Colby Emerson, who is now Colby Emerson Reed. She was president of the English Society, so she was also a very she kept that running, and then also contributed intensely to just, hey, let's figure this out, and let's read this story and really think about it and make sure we think it works. So, and then there were lots of other folks involved too. And it's interesting now to go and try and track those people down. I mean, I kind of think the way we did the first issue where, like I said, one of our people basically ran off the copies, on sort of good faith from where they were working at the time. It's a risky proposition, but I thought it took some guts to do that.
Yeah.
And then just having fun sitting around hand assembling it, which hopefully you guys don't do now. I mean, I think your production values are like way higher, but yeah. And I think just, one of the great things was at the time, so for myself in particular, trying to write poetry that I thought was good, and getting feedback from, William Logan's known for being pretty tough, as a teacher and as a critic. So I always felt like if we were going to have an event and sort of try things out, maybe read a poem, maybe that was more of a testing ground, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough because, like I said, 27 years, 3 children later, it's all a blur.
Yeah,
but,
I can imagine.
What I think, what I would say is I still have that urge to start something. I look around on the web and there's lots of cool publications, and especially during COVID when things were kind of a little bit slow at times, I sort of allowed myself to dream about starting something new. I still haven't quite figured out how to do that. I don't think I'd be thinking that if I hadn't dug in with the idea of tea at the time, you know? I mean, classes were great. We had a professor named Merchek who was really intense. He was really into theory and Freud and Lacan and all this stuff, you know, and he really made people squirm at times. So, you know, I still, you know, even though most of my time work-wise is spent designing, building things for clients, my favorite thing to do is go home, pick something off the bookshelf and, you know, sit down and read. So
there's this one event, it was like, this was 2 years ago, I think. It was with James. He organized this. It was like a very laid back, we just it was like an art, it was like a painting. There was like I'm trying to remember. It was at Plaza de Americas, and we just had like a bunch of like painting activities for people, and it was like a kind of invitation for people to, like, when submissions were open, for people to submit to the magazine, and we hung out for hours and we're just painting and inviting strangers to paint on this like mural on the floor, so that was a lot of fun.
I guess I would just say, if there's anything you want to do at all, just run with it. Like, even if it's like the craziest idea you have, because as vice president, you have a freedom. Like people like Ale at the time when he was president, editor-in-chief, he had so much riding on his shoulders that he couldn't have the freedom to go after everything he wanted to do. But vice president, they have like a little bit more freedom. So there's anything that you're wondering, like, you know, I wonder if T is gonna make like a TV show someday in like 10 years, then it's kind of like you have that freedom to check it out and like research and ask around. So I would tell the next vice president to be on their toes and to just, like, if you have any interest at all, just go after it.
But if I had to choose one, I think that, well, I'll start with what I've learned as a leader, and then I'll end with what I've learned as a staff member, as maybe a lowly editor on the way up. As a leader, I think that T has helped me realize that, first off, leadership could take many forms. And I played around a lot with those. But what I've come to realize is that the best leaders, or in my conception of it as a result of being a part of T, are those that don't necessarily force you to do anything as much as foster what you want to do as an individual. And that means having to be patient with your own goals and visions of what T can be. I've been thinking about you, Laura, and Jenna for the longest time before I knew the two of you. But it's a matter of finding the right person to be able to do the role successfully. Because at the end of the day, I'm not an octopus. I don't have 8 hands that I could be working on 8 different projects myself. T, and especially T24, where, I mean, you could ask James, you could ask myself, where we were doing a bulk of the work, and not necessarily, we hadn't learned how to delegate as a group as well. It caused a lot of I think, not only mental crisis in our own individual lives, but also put at jeopardy the goals of the magazine as a whole. So if I had to, in sum, say what I've learned as a leader at T, it's firstly that finding people first that are really interested in the same goals that you are, or if not that, fostering whatever goal it is that the individual wants to go for. And then secondly, it would be realizing your own limits as a person, realizing what you're interested in as a person, and then connecting that to what other people are interested in. And that connection, that web, is what ends up creating the massive goal of T, which is to build a community, and it creates all those facets.
I just hope that I hope that we could somehow get more recognition outside of Gainesville and outside of Florida even, because a lot of magazines that people know about are national magazines, but like there's certain special things about T being undergrad, and like I hope that someday we can get that recognition, and maybe even be like fully sustainable, which I shouldn't go into too much detail on that because Ali wants that kind of a secret, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's just like they're like he wanted to someday like be able to print our own magazines without actually going to like a third party for anything, you know, to like just rely on ourselves, to a point of like we don't even need like student government anymore. I think that'd be an amazing goal, that like we're fully sustainable and like we're still run by undergrads, but we're not like at the mercy of like any organization.
Yeah.
I hope that we continue, you know, to grow. Maybe not super, super, super big, like a massive, organization.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like we've grown by like, I mean, I don't know how many people are in T right now. I mean, there's 40, 50,
Probably
something
around that.
something like that. So I just hope that we continue to be a strong part of the UF community and continue to give students at UF a platform to share their work. I think that's like our main goal. So I think that's the most important thing. I hope we continue to do well. I also hope we kind of get more involved with like, you know, actual like the UF as an actual school, like, you know, the art departments, the English departments. I really feel like that'll, you know, solidify T as an undergraduate, you know, magazine. But I just hope people continue, I guess most importantly, in addition to giving students a platform to share their work, is I hope that it keeps that friendly and collaborative atmosphere, which I definitely think it will, because I've met so many amazing people through T, and it was like the main way for me to meet my friends. So I hope, especially for any freshmen who are maybe feeling lost or scared or feel like they haven't found their group yet, I hope T can continue to be a place where they can do that.